Hello lovelies, in this video we're going to be looking at variation for your A-level biology.
Variation. Variation is the differences between individual organisms. No two individuals are exactly the same. Even identical twins may have some different mutations which can occur as their DNA replicates in all of their cells during mitosis. They also could have changes that have been caused by their environment. Interspecific variation. Interspecific variation is the variation or differences between species. This is often very obvious if you think of something like a jellyfish versus a human versus a horse. There's obviously very big, clear differences between different species. Intraspecific variation is variation between individuals of the same species. The more genetic diversity there is within a species, the more differences there are, or the more variation there is. I've got dogs here as an example. These are all dogs, but there's very clearly some distinct differences between them that are quite large. So their size, the shape of their faces, the shape of their ears, the types of coat that they have, as well as things like the colour of the coat and the colour of eyes and things like that. But all of these are quite big differences. So dogs are an example of a species which show quite wide variation, intraspecific variation. There are two different forms of variation. Continuous variation, often shown in a histogram looking like this, or obviously a bell curve. Continuous variation is when there are a range of values that exist between two extremes. So there will be a small number of the population with some extreme variables, and then there will be the majority of the population which will be close to the mean, which is the most common feature or characteristic. It's often regulated by more than one gene, and it can be influenced by the environment. So for example, height. So obviously there are very few very, very, very tall people and very few very, very, very small people, but the majority of people fit around a mean average height for men and women, for example. Anything else that you can measure that is naturally occurring in continuous data, such as leaf length, the number of flagellum on a bacteria, anything like that where there'll be a range of values from one extreme to another, but there'll be a mean or most common value in the middle. Discontinuous variation then looks a lot more like your standard bar chart with separate groups or categories. There are normally two or more distinct categories with no values in between them, usually regulated by a single gene and not influenced by the environment. Example includes things like blood type, flower colour, sex. So blood type, for example, you are either A, you are either B, you are either AB, or you are O. There is no in between. So you're in one of those categories or groups. And your blood type is not going to be affected by your environment. The causes of variation. So we've already kind of alluded to this with the different types of variation, but there are causes of variation that are linked to genetics. So the genes that you inherit from your parents, but mostly it's the combination of alleles of those genes that are unique to the individual. So obviously humans will share many genes with each other, but each individual human is unique because the different combination of alleles of those genes is what makes them who they are. So the allele that you inherit for blood type, whether you get a certain eye colour and your earlobe shape, is all different alleles of genes that everybody, all humans have ears, blood, and eyes with a certain eye colour, but your alleles will make the combination of those that you have unique to you. Environmental variation usually are the results of lifestyle effects. So for example, the effect of diet on body mass. If you eat a certain diet, you're going to increase your body mass. Your skin tone can change due to exposure to UV light, so you can get a suntan. These things are ways in which your environment can change your physical characteristics or appearance. There can be biotic effects of other organisms. So if grass is constantly eaten by animals, then it won't grow very tall, for example. Or it could be an abiotic effect of the environment. So this is an example of where something like soil pH can change the flower colour in hydrangeas. So that's a physical discontinuous type of variation flower colour, and it can be changed based on an abiotic factor in their environment. Finally, some variation can be explained by a combination of both genetic and environmental causes. So changes in the environment can affect which genes are activated, because obviously not all genes are necessarily expressed or switched on in every organism all the time. This is a phenomenon known as epigenetics. There are also some characteristics, for example, height, that can be affected by both your genes and environmental factors like your lifestyle. So if you eat a really good diet, then you will obviously grow better. However, you're only going to be able to grow to a height that is kind of limited by your genes. So you could have the opposite way around and have genes that could mean that you could grow very, very tall. But if you have a poor diet when you're a child, you will not reach that genetic potential of height. Okay? Or similarly, if you are very small, genetically you inherited genes for not being very tall from your parents, and you eat loads, that's great, but that's not going to be able to make you grow any more than your height that you've inherited from your parents. So this is kind of one of those ones that's a combination.
Ouch! This is why in some videos I've explained scratches.